Have you ever felt like no one truly understands what's going on inside you? Not just on the surface, not the casual, "I'm fine," that we give to people, but deep down, where your thoughts feel heavy and your emotions feel tangled. It's a strange kind of silence, the one that exists even when you're surrounded by voices. You smile, you nod, you respond, but inside, there's a distance that no one seems to notice. Sometimes loneliness doesn't come from being physically alone. It comes from feeling unseen. You could be in a room full of people, laughing at the same jokes, sitting at the same table, yet there's a quiet voice inside asking, if they really knew me, would they still stay? And that question lingers longer than the conversations around you. There are nights when everything slows down. The world goes quiet, and suddenly your thoughts get louder. You replay moments, conversations, regrets. You think about what you said, what you should have said, what you wish someone had understood without you having to explain. In those moments, loneliness feels heavier, like a weight that presses against your chest. It's in those silent hours that overthinking becomes your companion. You start questioning your worth, your place in people's lives, your purpose. You wonder if you're too much or not enough at the same time. And the hardest part is that no one else can hear this conversation happening inside your mind. You may even scroll through your phone, seeing people connected, laughing, sharing moments, and it makes you feel even more distant. Not because you're jealous, but because you wonder why it feels so easy for everyone else to belong, while you're still searching for where you fit. And maybe you've tried to open up before. Maybe you trusted someone with your feelings, hoping they would understand. But instead, you felt dismissed, misunderstood, or simply not heard the way you needed. So now, you keep things inside, not because you want to, but because it feels safer that way. Loneliness can make you feel invisible, like your presence doesn't change anything, like your absence wouldn't be noticed. It whispers lies that tell you that you don't matter as much as others, that your struggles aren't important enough to be heard. And slowly, those whispers begin to sound like truth. But what makes loneliness even more complicated is that it doesn't always look like sadness. Sometimes it looks like strength. It looks like someone who keeps going, who shows up, who handles everything quietly. No one suspects the storm inside because on the outside, everything seems calm. There are moments when you wish someone would just notice. Not because you said something, but because they felt something was off. You wish someone would ask, "Are you really okay?" and actually wait for a real answer. Not the automatic response, but the honest one. And yet, despite everything, you keep going. You wake up, you face the day, you carry your thoughts with you. You fulfill your responsibilities, you interact, you function. But deep inside, there's still that quiet emptiness waiting for something, or someone, to fill it. Sometimes you start believing that this feeling will never go away. That this is just how life is going to be, always a little distant, always a little disconnected. You begin to accept loneliness as a permanent part of your identity rather than a passing phase. You might even isolate yourself more, thinking it will protect you from disappointment. If you don't expect anything from anyone, you can't be hurt. But the truth is, that kind of protection often deepens the loneliness instead of healing it. There's also a kind of exhaustion that comes with feeling alone. Not physical tiredness, but emotional fatigue. The kind that makes even small interactions feel draining. The kind that makes you withdraw even when a part of you still longs for connection. And in the middle of all this, there's a silent question that keeps coming back. Why do I feel this way? It's a question without an easy answer. Because loneliness isn't always about what's missing around you. It's often about what feels missing within you. But here's something important to hold on to, even if it's hard to believe right now. The way you feel does not define your worth. The silence you're experiencing is not proof that you don't matter. And the emptiness you feel is not permanent, even if it has been there for a long time. So stay with me, because what you're feeling right now is not the end of your story. It's just a moment, a heavy, confusing, quiet moment, but not a final one. And by the end of this journey, not always you will begin to see loneliness. It doesn't always break you down in obvious ways. Sometimes, it's quiet, almost invisible. It's that feeling of emptiness that sits inside your chest for no clear reason, like something is missing but you can't quite name what it is. You go through your day, doing what you're supposed to do, but there's a hollow space within you that nothing seems to fill. It feels like your heart is carrying a weight it was never meant to carry alone. Not a dramatic pain, not something you can easily explain, but a constant heaviness. You try to ignore it, distract yourself, stay busy, yet it follows you everywhere, quietly reminding you that something inside you is unsettled. And then there's the overthinking. Endless thoughts looping in your mind, refusing to slow down. You analyze every interaction, every word, every silence. Did I say something wrong? Do they really care? Am I just an option to them? These thoughts don't come once, they come again and again, until you feel mentally exhausted. Loneliness also has a way of making you feel forgotten. Not necessarily abandoned, but overlooked. Like people are moving on with their lives, building connections, sharing moments, while you're somehow standing still, watching from the outside. You wonder if anyone truly notices your absence, or if your presence ever made a difference at all. Sometimes, it feels like you're easy to replace. Like if you disappeared for a while, life would just continue as normal for everyone else. And that thought hurts more than you want to admit. Because deep down, everyone wants to feel like they matter. Like they hold a place in someone's heart that can't be easily filled. There are moments when you want to reach out, to talk to someone, to just be heard. But then another voice stops you. What if they don't understand? What if I'm just bothering them? So instead of speaking, you stay silent. And that silence slowly builds a wall between you and the world. You might even laugh, smile, and seem completely fine on the outside. People see you and assume everything is okay. But what they don't see is how much effort it takes just to hold yourself together. How much strength it takes to carry feelings you don't know how to express. Loneliness can make you question your value in ways you never expected. It makes you wonder if you're enough, if you're worthy of deep connection, if there's something about you that makes people stay at a distance. And the more you question it, the more real those doubts begin to feel. But here's something important, something that often gets lost in these moments. This feeling is not unique to you alone. It might feel personal, like you're the only one going through it, but you're not. Every person, at some point in their life, experiences this same emptiness, this same confusion, this same longing to feel understood. Some hide it better than others. Some distract themselves with noise, with work, with people. But deep down, loneliness is a shared human experience. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that you're human, that you feel deeply, that you crave connection the way every heart was designed to. Even the people who seem the happiest, the most surrounded, the most confident, they have had moments where they felt completely alone. Moments where they questioned their place, their worth, their belonging. You're not standing outside of humanity. You're right in the middle of it. And maybe no one talks about it enough. Maybe that's why it feels so isolating. Because everyone is silently fighting their own internal battles, while appearing okay on the surface. And in that silence, we all assume we're the only ones struggling. But what if the feeling of loneliness isn't meant to break you, but to guide you? What if it's pointing you towards something deeper, something more meaningful than the surface-level connections you've been relying on? What if I told you, you are not actually alone? What if the feeling you've been calling loneliness isn't what you think it is? What if being alone doesn't actually mean you've been abandoned? Because somewhere along the way, we started believing that silence means absence, that distance means we've been left behind. But that isn't always the truth. Being alone and being abandoned are not the same thing. Being alone is a state, but abandonment is a conclusion. And sometimes, we reach that conclusion too quickly, without seeing the full picture. Just because people aren't around you in the way you expect doesn't mean you've been forgotten. It might mean something deeper is happening, something you haven't yet understood. There are moments in life when everything quiets down, not to punish you, but to make space. Space to think, to reflect, to reconnect with something beyond the noise. But when we're used to constant distraction, that silence can feel uncomfortable, even painful. So we label it as loneliness, when in reality, it might be an invitation. An invitation to look beyond people. Because as much as we rely on others for comfort, for validation, for understanding, they were never meant to carry the full weight of your heart. Humans are limited. They forget, they misunderstand, they get busy, they fall short. Not because they don't care, but because they're human. And when you place all your emotional dependence on something limited, it will eventually feel like it's not enough. That's where the emptiness begins, not because you're unloved, but because your heart is searching for something more constant, something more complete. What if that emptiness you feel is not a sign of loss, but a sign of longing? A deeper longing that can't be fulfilled by temporary connections. A longing that was placed within you for a reason. Because the truth is, you were never created to feel complete through people alone. There is a part of you that only finds peace in something greater, something that doesn't leave, doesn't ignore, doesn't misunderstand. And this is where the perspective begins to change. Slowly, gently, you start to realize that being physically alone does not mean you are truly by yourself. There is a presence that does not disappear when everyone else does. A presence that doesn't depend on your popularity, your social circle, or your ability to express yourself perfectly. Even in your quietest moments, you are seen. Even when no one checks on you, you are known. Every thought that overwhelms you, every feeling you can't explain, every tear you hide, none of it goes unnoticed. There is a closeness that exists beyond what your eyes can see. A connection that doesn't require words, explanations, or validation from others. It's not distant, and it's not conditional. It's constant, and maybe you haven't felt it clearly yet because the noise of the world has been too loud. The expectations, the distractions, the need for people's approval, it all clouds something that has always been there. But when everything slows down, when the distractions fade, when you're left alone with your thoughts, that's when the opportunity appears. Not to fall deeper into loneliness, but to discover a presence that was never absent to begin with. You are not alone in your struggle. You are not alone in your silence. You are not alone in your pain. There is someone who knows you more deeply than anyone ever could, who understands what you cannot even put into words. And the more you begin to open your heart to this reality, the more that emptiness starts to shift. It doesn't disappear instantly, but it transforms. It becomes lighter, more meaningful, less frightening. Because being alone was never meant to make you feel abandoned. It was meant to help you realize who has been with you all along. And as this understanding begins to settle within you, something powerful is about to unfold. A truth so simple, yet so deeply comforting. A message that has already been given, waiting for you to truly hear it. A message from the Quran that changes everything. There is a moment when everything you've been feeling, every question, every doubt, every quiet ache in your heart, meets a truth so powerful that it changes the way you see yourself, your loneliness, and your entire existence. Allah says, and we are closer to him than his jugular vein. Quran 50-16, closer than the very thing that carries your life. Closer than your breath, closer than anything you can physically feel or see. Just pause for a moment and let that sink in, not as words you hear, but as a reality you try to feel. You've been searching for closeness in people, in conversations, in being understood. But this ayah shifts everything. It tells you that the closest presence to you has never been distant, not even for a second. Every thought that crosses your mind, Allah knows it, the ones you're proud of, and the ones you wish you could erase. The worries you replay over and over again in your head, the questions you're too afraid to ask anyone, none of them are hidden. Even the emotions you don't fully understand yourself, He understands them completely. When your heart feels heavy and you don't know why, He knows why. When you feel hurt but can't explain it in words, He already understands the depth of that pain. When you sit in silence, staring into nothing, lost in your thoughts, He is aware of every second of it. There is not a single moment of your loneliness that goes unnoticed. And the most powerful part is this: you don't have to explain yourself to be understood. You don't have to find the perfect words. You don't have to organize your feelings into something that makes sense. Before you speak, He already knows. Think about how often you've wanted someone to just understand you without needing a long explanation. To just feel what you feel without you having to say it out loud. That level of understanding you've been searching for in people already exists with Allah. And it has always been there. Even in your lowest moments, when you felt distant, when you felt empty, when you felt like no one was there, this closeness never disappeared. It didn't weaken, it didn't fade, it remained constant, even when your awareness of it didn't. Sometimes we think we are alone because we can't see or hear anything responding back to us. But this ayah reminds us that presence is not always something you see, it's something you come to realize. Allah is closer to you than your jugular vein, which means there is no distance to cross, no gap to close. You're not trying to reach something far away, you're becoming aware of something that has always been near. So in those quiet moments, when your thoughts begin to overwhelm you, instead of feeling like you're trapped inside your own mind, realize that you are not facing those thoughts alone. When your heart feels heavy, you are not carrying it by yourself. When you feel forgotten, you are not forgotten. And when you sit in silence, thinking no one is listening, understand that there is a listener who hears even what you don't say. Just pause here for a moment. Breathe, let everything slow down, feel the weight of your thoughts, and then gently remind yourself, I am not alone. Not in my mind, not in my heart, not in my silence, because the one who created me is closer to me than anything else. And once you begin to truly feel this, not just understand it, but feel it, loneliness starts to lose its power over you. It no longer feels like emptiness, it starts to feel like a space where you can connect, where you can be seen, where you can finally be understood in the deepest way possible. There is a question that quietly sits in the hearts of many people. If Allah is so close to me, then why do I still feel alone? It's a question that doesn't come from doubt, but from a place of confusion and longing. Because if this closeness is real, then why does the emptiness still exist? The answer isn't harsh, it's deeply gentle, and full of wisdom. Sometimes, the feeling of loneliness is not meant to push you away, it's meant to pull you closer. Not closer to people, not closer to distractions, but closer to Allah. Because when everything around you feels full, when your heart is completely occupied with people, attention, and noise, it becomes easy to forget the one who is always there. Not intentionally, but naturally. The heart starts attaching itself to what it constantly receives. So sometimes, that constant flow is reduced. Not to hurt you, but to redirect you. When people don't respond the way you expect, when conversations feel empty, when you start realizing that even those closest to you cannot fully understand you, these moments begin to uncover a truth. People were never meant to be your ultimate source of peace. They can support you, comfort you, stand beside you, but they cannot complete you. And when your heart begins to detach from depending entirely on people, it creates space. A space that may initially feel like emptiness, but is actually an opening. An opening for a deeper, more meaningful connection. This is one of the hidden wisdoms behind loneliness. It clears the noise so you can hear something you've been missing. And you're not the first to feel this way. Even the most beloved people to Allah, the prophets, experienced moments of deep isolation. Not because they were abandoned, but because their journey required a connection beyond people. Think about Prophet Yunus, as, alone in the darkness inside the belly of the whale, surrounded by layers of darkness. No one to call, no one to respond, no escape in sight. If loneliness had a form, it would look like that moment. Yet it was in that depth of isolation that he turned completely to Allah, and he made that powerful dua, one that is still recited by millions today. His loneliness didn't destroy him, it became the reason for his rescue. Or think about Prophet Yusuf, as thrown into a well by his own brothers, separated from his family, later imprisoned unjustly. Years of isolation, misunderstanding, and distance. But through every stage, Allah was with him, shaping him, elevating him, preparing him for something greater. Even our beloved Prophet Muhammad experienced moments where he withdrew from people, seeking solitude in the cave of Hira. Before revelation began, there was quiet. There was distance from society. And in that stillness, something life-changing was about to unfold. These were not moments of abandonment, they were moments of preparation. And maybe, in your own life, something similar is happening. Not in the same scale, not in the same form, but in meaning. Your loneliness might not be a sign that something is wrong with you, it might be a sign that Allah is creating a path for you to find Him more deeply. Because when you have no one else to turn to, you turn to Him differently. Your dua becomes more sincere. Your becomes softer. Your words become more real, less filtered. You stop trying to impress, and you start trying to connect. And that connection is unlike anything else. So what you're feeling right now, it's not pointless. It's not random. It's not a punishment. It's a redirection. A gentle, sometimes painful, but deeply meaningful redirection, from relying on what is temporary, to connecting with what is eternal. And once you begin to see it this way, loneliness no longer feels like something that's taking from you. It starts to feel like something that's guiding you somewhere you were always meant to go. There are moments in life when loneliness doesn't just feel like silence, it feels like darkness. Not the kind you see with your eyes, but the kind you feel within your chest. A darkness where hope feels distant, where answers don't come, and where you begin to wonder if anyone is even listening. Imagine a man surrounded by that kind of darkness, not just emotionally, but physically. Prophet Yunus, as, alone in the depths of the ocean, inside the belly of a creature, with layers of darkness surrounding him. The darkness of the night, the darkness of the sea, and the darkness of the whale. No sound, no human presence, no way out. If there was ever a moment that defined complete isolation, it was this. No messages to send, no one to call, no voice that could reach him, no path to escape, just him, and what must have felt like an overwhelming silence. But what makes this story so powerful is not the darkness itself. It's what happened within it. In that moment, when everything else was stripped away, his heart turned completely to Allah. Not with long explanations, not with complicated words, but with a simple, sincere cry from the depths of his soul. La ilaha illa anta, subhanaka inni kuntu minaz zalimin. There is no deity except you. You are perfect. Indeed, I was among the wrongdoers. A dua that came from a place of complete vulnerability. No distractions, no reliance on anything else. Just a fully aware of the only one who could hear him, even there. And Allah heard him, not because Yunus was surrounded by people, not because someone carried his voice, but because distance does not exist between a servant and Allah. Even in the deepest part of the ocean, even within layers of darkness, he was never truly alone. And that moment of isolation, the one that could have broken him, became the moment that saved him. Because when his heart reached Allah, Allah responded. The darkness didn't last forever. They released him, the hardship ended, but the lesson remained, etched into history, into hearts, into every person who would one day feel alone and wonder if their voice could ever be heard. Because this story is not just about Yunus, it's about you. It's about those moments when you feel trapped in your own thoughts. When your situation feels heavy, confusing, or impossible to escape. When it seems like there's no one around who truly understands what you're going through. In those moments, it's easy to believe that silence means absence. That because you don't hear a response, no one is listening. But this story reminds you of something deeper. Even in your silence, you are heard. Even in your confusion, you are understood. Even in your darkest moments, you are not alone. Because the one who responded to Yunus, in the depths of the ocean, is the same one who is with you right now. You don't need perfect words. You don't need a perfect state. You don't need to wait until everything makes sense. You just need to turn your heart, even slightly, even quietly. And that is enough. So if you're in a moment right now where everything feels dark, where your thoughts are overwhelming, where your heart feels heavy, where you don't know what to do next, remember this. Your situation is not beyond his reach. Your voice is not too small for him to hear. Your pain is not unnoticed. Because sometimes, the very moment you feel the most alone, is actually the moment you are closest to being heard. Your darkest moment might be your closest moment to Allah. There comes a moment in life when you begin to see people for who they truly are. Not in a negative way, but in a real way. You start to understand that no matter how much someone cares about you, they are still human. They have limits, they get tired, they get distracted, they forget. People can love you, and still fail to show up when you need them the most. Not always intentionally, not always out of neglect, but because they are dealing with their own struggles, their own thoughts, their own lives. And sometimes, your pain doesn't reach them in the way you hoped it would. You might expect someone to understand you without explaining, but they don't. You might hope someone will notice your silence, but they overlook it. You might believe someone will stay the same forever, but they change. And every time this happens, it leaves a small in your heart. A quiet disappointment, not loud enough to break you instantly, but deep enough to remind you that something is missing. Over time, these moments begin to build a realization. People cannot carry you completely. No matter how close they are, no matter how much they care, they were never designed to fulfill every emotional need you have. Because human connection, as beautiful as it is still imperfect. People leave, sometimes physically, sometimes emotionally. They move on, they grow in different directions, or they simply become distant. And when that happens, it can feel like the ground beneath you is shifting. People disappoint, not always in big ways, but in small, repeated moments. A message not replied to. A feeling not understood, a presence that fades when you needed it the most. People forget, not because you are forgettable, but because life pulls their attention in many directions. What feels heavy to you might not even cross their mind the same way. And if your heart is fully attached to people, these moments can feel like loss, over and over again. But then there is a different kind of connection. A connection that is not affected by time, distance, or human limitation. Allah does not leave, not when you are at your best, and not when you are at your lowest. Not when you are consistent, and not when you are struggling. His presence does not depend on your perfection. It is constant. Allah does not ignore. There is not a single moment where your feelings are dismissed, where your thoughts are overlooked, or where your pain is too small to matter. Even the you whisper inside your heart without moving your lips is heard. Allah does not forget, not your efforts, not your struggles, not your silent battles that no one else sees. Every tear, every thought, every moment of patience, it is all known, all recorded, all valued. And this is where the shift begins. When you compare the two, not to reject people, but to understand their limits, you start to see where your heart truly belongs. You begin to realize that relying completely on people will always leave gaps, but connecting with Allah fills something deeper. This doesn't mean you stop loving people. It doesn't mean you isolate yourself or push others away. It simply means you stop expecting from them what only Allah can give. You begin to love people without depending on them for your completeness. You begin to appreciate their presence without fearing their absence. You begin to connect, but with balance. Because your heart is no longer anchored to something that can change, it is connected to something that never does. And when that shift happens, something powerful takes place inside you. Disappointment hurts less, absence feels lighter, loneliness begins to fade, because even when people are not there, you know that you are not alone. Not emotionally, not spiritually, not in any way that truly matters. Because the one your heart was always searching for, was never missing. He was always there, closer, more constant, and more understanding than anyone else could ever be. There is something important you need to understand about loneliness, something that can completely change how you experience it. Not every thought you hear in your mind is truly yours. Not every feeling that passes through your heart is a reflection of reality. Sometimes, in your most vulnerable moments, there is something else influencing the way you see yourself. When loneliness settles in, your mind becomes a quiet space. And in that quiet, certain thoughts begin to appear. They don't knock, they don't introduce themselves. They just arrive, subtly, repeatedly, convincingly. You're not important. No one really cares about you. If you disappeared, nothing would change. At first, these thoughts feel like they belong to you. They sound like your voice. They echo your fears. And because they come from within, they feel true. But here's the reality: you need to separate the feeling from the truth. These are not facts. These are whispers. Whispers that aim to weaken you, to make you question your worth, to slowly disconnect you from hope, from people, and most importantly, from Allah. Because when a person starts believing they are worthless, they stop reaching out. They stop making dua, they stop believing they matter. And that is exactly how loneliness becomes deeper, not because of your situation, but because of what you start believing about yourself. But think about it for a moment. If you were truly worthless, why would you feel so deeply? Why would your heart care so much about connection, about meaning, about being understood? That depth within you is not a flaw, it's a sign of something valuable. Those thoughts telling you that no one cares are not measuring your reality. They are distorting it, because there are people who care in ways you may not always see. And more importantly, there is a Creator who cares in ways you cannot even fully comprehend. A care that is not based on how often you're noticed, how many messages you receive, or how visible your presence is to others. So when those whispers come, and they will come, you need to learn how to respond to them. Not by fighting them with emotion alone, but by recognizing them for what they are. A thought says, "You're alone." You respond, "No, I feel alone, but I am not alone." A thought says, "You don't matter." You respond, "I matter enough to be created, to be sustained, to be known by Allah." A thought says, "No one understands you." You respond, "Allah understands me completely." This is where your power lies, not in never feeling these thoughts, but in not surrendering to them. Because the moment you start questioning those whispers instead of accepting them, they begin to lose their strength. They stop controlling how you see yourself. They stop defining your worth. And slowly, something changes inside you. You begin to see yourself with more clarity. You begin to feel less controlled by passing emotions. You begin to reconnect with a truth that was always there, just buried under doubt. You are not the negative voice in your head. You are the one who hears it, and has the ability to choose what to believe. And once you realize that, loneliness stops being a place where you feel trapped, and starts becoming a moment where you grow stronger, more aware, and more connected to what is real. So the next time those thoughts try to pull you down, remember this: they are whispers, not truth. And you have the strength to rise above them. When loneliness hits, the most important thing is not to stay stuck in the feeling. You don't need to wait for it to pass on its own. You can respond to it. You can turn that moment into something meaningful, something that brings you closer to peace instead of deeper into emptiness. Start with something simple: talk to Allah. Not in a formal, perfect way. Not with memorized words or long phrases. Just speak. Speak from where you are, exactly as you are. If your heart feels heavy, say it. If you feel lost, admit it. If you don't even know what to say, then say that too. "Oh Allah, I feel alone, and I don't understand why." Even a sentence like that is powerful. Because dua is not about perfection, it's about connection. It's about turning your toward the one who already knows what's inside it. You don't need a special time. You don't need a perfect place. That moment of loneliness you're feeling right now, that is your moment. That is your to speak, to release, to be heard. And then, take a step further, stand up and pray. Even if it's just 2 rak'ah. Not long, not complicated. Just sincere, just you, standing in front of Allah, with everything you're carrying inside you. Let your recitation be slow. Let your sujood be real. Stay there a little longer than usual, and say what you couldn't say before. Because there is something about sujood that changes the state of your heart. It grounds you. It reminds you that even when everything feels out of control, you still have a place to return to. A place where you are never ignored. After that, surround your heart with something pure. Listen to the Quran. Not as background noise, not just to fill silence, but to actually listen. Even if you don't understand every word, let the sound reach you. Let it settle into your chest. There is a calmness in the Quran that speaks to parts of you that nothing else can reach. Sometimes, one ayah is enough to shift your entire state. And as you do this, talking, praying, listening, something begins to change. Not always instantly, not always dramatically, but quietly, gently. The heaviness starts to lift. The thoughts begin to slow down. The silence no longer feels empty. Because you've filled it with something real. The key is not to delay this. Don't tell yourself you'll do it later. Don't wait until you feel better to turn to Allah. Turn to Him while you feel this way. That's when it matters the most. Right now, in this very moment, you have a choice. You can sit with the loneliness, or you can respond to it. You can let your thoughts take over, or you can redirect your heart. So take that step, make that dua, pray those 2 rak'ah, play the Quran, even if it's just for a few minutes. Because this moment you're in, it's not just a feeling to endure. It's an opportunity to connect, to be heard, to find something deeper than the loneliness itself. And the more you act on it, the more you realize something powerful. You were never meant to handle these moments alone. You were meant to turn them into a that leads you back to Allah. When was the last time you truly spoke to Allah, not out of routine, not out of habit, but with complete honesty? Not the kind of you've memorized, not the ones you repeat without thinking, but the kind that come from deep within your chest, when your heart is heavy and your thoughts have nowhere else to go. Pause for a moment, and really think about that. When was the last time you sat alone, with no distractions, no phone, no noise, and just spoke? Not perfectly, not formally, just honestly. When was the last time you told Allah exactly how you feel, without holding anything back? The confusion, the pain, the overthinking, the questions you're afraid to ask anyone else. When was the last time you said, Ya Allah, I don't understand what I'm going through? When was the last time you admitted, I feel lost, and I need you? Not because someone told you to make dua, but because your heart needed it. Think about how often you talk to people throughout your day. Messages, conversations, small talk, words that come and go so easily. But when it comes to Allah, why does it sometimes feel distant? Why do we hold back, when He already knows everything inside us? Why do we wait for the right moment, when every moment is already the right moment? Just sit with that question, don't rush past it. Let it settle. Let the silence exist for a few seconds, the kind of silence that makes you aware of your own. Because maybe the connection you've been searching for isn't missing. Maybe it's just been waiting for you to turn back to it. Not with perfection, not with long du'as, just with sincerity. So right now, in this very moment, ask yourself again. When was the last time you spoke to Allah, honestly? And maybe this is your moment to do it again. Now it's time to turn everything you've felt, everything you've understood, into something simple, something you can actually live by. Because this message is not just meant to inspire you for a moment, it's meant to stay with you, to guide you every time loneliness tries to return. So here is a clear, simple 3-step system you can follow. No complexity, no pressure, just something real and repeatable. Step 1. Remember the ayah. And we are closer to Him than His jugular vein. Quran 50-16. Don't just hear it, hold on to it. Memorize it, keep it in your mind like an anchor. Because the moment loneliness starts to creep in, this is the truth you come back to. Not your feelings, not your thoughts. You might feel alone, but you are not alone. Step 2. Repeat it daily. Not once, not occasionally, every single day. Repeat it when you wake up. Repeat it when your mind feels heavy. Repeat it when you're sitting in silence and your thoughts begin to wander. Let it become a quiet reminder that follows you throughout your day. The more you repeat it, the more it moves from your tongue into your heart. And slowly, it starts to change the way you see your moments of loneliness. It stops feeling like emptiness and starts feeling like closeness. Step 3. Make dua when you feel alone. Not later, not when things get worse. Right in that moment, when the feeling hits, pause. Don't run from it. Don't distract yourself immediately. Turn it into a connection. Say something simple. Ya Allah, I feel alone, Remind me that you are near. Even if it's just one sentence. Even if it's just a whisper in your heart. That moment of turning to Allah is what transforms loneliness into something meaningful. And the more you do this, the more natural it becomes. Loneliness comes, you remember the ayah. Your heart feels heavy, you repeat it. Your thoughts overwhelm you, you make dua. That's it, 3 simple steps, but when you stay consistent with them, they begin to reshape your entire experience. Because you're no longer just feeling loneliness, you're responding to it. You're no longer letting your thoughts control you, you're grounding yourself in something real. And most importantly, you're no longer facing these moments by yourself, you're turning them into moments of connection with Allah. So keep it simple, remember, repeat, return, and every time you do, you come a little closer to a peace that doesn't depend on anyone else. As we come to the end of this journey, take a moment, and look back at everything you felt. All the heaviness, all the questions, all the moments where you truly believed you were alone. And now ask yourself, was it really loneliness? Or was it something deeper that you hadn't understood yet? Because the truth is, nothing about your life has ever been empty. Those silent nights, they were witnessed. Those overwhelming thoughts, they were known. Those moments where you felt like no one understood you, you were understood more deeply than you could ever imagine. You were never alone, not for a second, not in your strongest moments, and not in your weakest ones. Allah was always there, closer than your breath, closer than your heartbeat, closer than anything you've ever searched for in this world. And we are closer to Him than His jugular vein. Quran 50-16, read it again, slowly. Let it settle, feel what it means, not just in your mind, but in your heart. You don't have to search for closeness anymore. You don't have to chase understanding from people who may never fully see what's inside you. Because the one who created you already knows, already hears, already understands, and He has been with you all along. So the next time you feel that silence, don't fear it. The next time your heart feels heavy, don't run from it. Because now you know, those moments are not empty. They are full of a presence you were just beginning to notice. So hold on to this truth. Come back to it again and again. And never let your feelings convince you of something that isn't real. Because no matter how it feels, you may feel alone, but you are never unseen, never unheard, and never unloved by Allah. If this message touched your heart, don't let it stay with you alone. Like this video, so it can reach more hearts that need it. Subscribe, so you can continue this journey of reminders and connection. Share it with someone who might be silently struggling, someone who needs to hear that they are not alone. And before you leave, take a moment and write in the comments, Allah is with me. Not just as words, but as a reminder to yourself. Because from this moment on, you don't walk through your life the same way again. You walk with awareness, you walk with connection, you walk knowing, you were never alone.